Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So for those tuning in over Zoom, welcome back to this afternoon Dhamma talk and meditation. So the last couple of days, we've been talking primarily about the living with awareness. And now this afternoon, we're going to focus on the sort of complementary topic of dying with awareness. Now, dying and death is probably not most people's favorite subject to contemplate, but it's considered to be a very important reality to contemplate, because the time of our death is probably the most momentous or powerful moment, or at least the time of death in our whole life. Now, birth and death are like two sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other. That's just the nature of the reality of the conditioned world, the material world, and the phenomenon of living in bodies and birth and death. And actually, there's only one thing that's certain in life, and that is death. Because life is not really certain. A baby could get, develop in the womb and then die at the time of birth, or die after coming out 1 or 2 days, or any combination of days, throughout the whole life. People are dying. They die at 2 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, up to, over 100 in some cases. And that time of the death is not known. So death is certain, but life isn't certain. But death gives rise to another life in most cases, and this life ends in the death. But a lot of people have the fear of death. And they think it's, for some reason they shouldn't die. Or of course they know they're going to die, but it's not a very, favorite topic, or it's not a topic people discuss at the dinner table, is it? Around Thanksgiving reunions or other holidays, unless of course a relative happened to have just died. But let's, and sometimes death is seen as, a mistake. And people are always wondering about, why did these people die, and why did it happen this way, and so on. And according to the Buddha, well, according to the reality, Actually, the Buddha was contemplating the nature of birth and death too. And, even on the night of his enlightenment. And he was wondering, what is the cause of death? And he came up with a brilliant reality. He said, birth is the cause of death. Isn't it? So actually, there's a saying that life is a sexually transmitted disease, and it's always fatal. Now, of course, people won't like to hear that, but there's a reality to that. So let's start with some statistics. So there's 7 billion people supposedly on the planet now. And if the average lifespan is 75 years or so, and if you crunch the numbers down, it comes somewhere out to about 55 million people will die every year. 55 million people. Or 7 billion people will die in 75 years. I mean, that's a lot of bones, right? If they pile up all those bones in one spot, it would probably be as high as Mount Everest. So actually, death is not anything unusual. Death is very natural. But a lot of people think it's something to be, feared. And a lot of people do have fear of death. And why is that? Well, we'll touch on that a little bit later. So anyway, it comes down to how many people are dying every day. Probably, 200,000 or so. But most of these deaths occur very far away from us. And we may hear about death, in the news, of course, and a number of people died on the other side of the world, or maybe even in this country, from cyclones or hurricanes, or of course, murders, and now opiate overdose deaths, and people are dying from so many different causes and conditions. But we've sort of survived, and so the people that do live longer, we have a kind of survivor's mind. We made it one more day. Because there's plenty of people in the world that have their life planned out. Tomorrow they're going here, next month they're going there. Young people are planning out their whole futures, but many of them wind up dead before that ever occurs. And there's a saying, actually, that tomorrow or the next life, we don't know which is going to come first. Because again, a lot of people have planned for tomorrow and, they didn't wake up. And, this is a reality that happens, many, many, many times, every day. So death shouldn't be seen as anything unusual. Then why do some people live to be older or reach their lifespan, and others die, very early, as I already mentioned, from there's so many infinite numbers of causes. Now, a lot of people reach the lifespan, they live out the lifespan, and the body just naturally starts dying. But some people, of course, live longer than others. Then others might die from disease or some sickness at a younger age, even in their middle ages or younger. And a lot of people die from accidents. And there are too many innumerable to mention. So these different times that people die are largely due to the karmic conditions, the seeds of causes that we may not know whether they're genetic or they are other causes that we may not be aware of. But everyone dies from these different kind of, the lifespan is usually determined by that. If somebody has the past karmic conditions for whatever reason to die as a young child or to, be severely disformed or something like that. And so those are largely due to the karma or the conditions that we brought with us even from the previous life. Now, we've already learned or talked about, what is our life in general. So the baby's born, it grows up, it learns some skills, the so-called normal life, they grow up according to the, American dream and so on, and get a college education, get married, have some kids, live through life, have to undergo sicknesses, problems, diseases, and then finally die. And, what is the point in that, actually? Of course, different religions have different points of view on the meaning of that. What is the reason, anyway, for these lives? Now, according to the Dhamma, this life should be used to improve the quality of our mind. A lot of people use the life to improve the quality of their physical life. Poor people want to have more money so they can have a car and all kinds, and that's understandable. But the idea is that most people want to improve the quality of their life. So, people that already have a lot of money would like to have a lot more money or get richer and richer because they want a newer and bigger car. Or they want, all these material things. So that's, just putting it in a general sense, terms. But according to the Dhamma, the life should be led to improve the quality of our mind, because it's the mind that is actually the only thing you're going to take with you to the next life. Because when you die, you can't even take one tiny hair with you when you die. And the only thing that goes to the next life, wherever you imagine that might be or might not be, but is the quality of one's consciousness, and also the seeds of karma in the memory that we've been accumulating with us, our whole life. And dreams are a good indicator of that. Because, actually, when you go to sleep, it's almost like a kind of death. So you go to sleep each night, and so basically you die to this world. You may have some dreams, or maybe you don't have dreams, and you wake up. And usually you wake up in the same bed, not all the time, but usually, that you went to sleep in, and in the same place that you went to sleep in. But with death of the physical body, you may die in one bed, but wake up in a totally new environment, according to samsara and according to, whatever realm of birth where the mind is attracted due to its karma. You could wake up, in another human body or, various other types of bodies, deva or animal or and so on. But I don't want to get too much into that. But at any rate, each night basically is a kind of a death. And most people, imagine that they're going to wake up, but a lot of people don't. So if you have dreams, I suppose everybody has some dreams, right? Sometimes they're kind of weird too, right? Or even some, not very pleasant dreams. So these dreams, basically, that's stuff that's in your unconscious mind. And if they're still there when you happen to die, then those are going to be the kind of memories and strong sort of power that may take the mind, determine or influence where the mind might be reborn again. I'm saying this just to kind of lay a groundwork for understanding the importance of living the life according to the Dhamma. So of course, as I already mentioned, in the Dhamma we see the life as an opportunity to grow the mind toward liberation. Because the way we see the cosmology, so to speak, from the Buddhist point of view, this mind goes through many, many, many innumerable lifetimes through samsara, accumulating karma, and then hopefully working out some of that accumulated karma. And especially the kind of karma that keeps bringing us a lot of problems and suffering. So actually each life is sort of similar to a child going through school. So like to see it as a classroom. So we are, if a child fails one grade, then what happens normally when they fail a grade, like if you fail 6th grade or 7th grade, you have to go back and do it over again? I'm asking. So in the same way, if we fail the lessons of this life, we're all born to learn something in this life. Learn something about what life is, learn something about the causes and the nature of suffering, and learn something about happiness. And if we don't learn those lessons, that's how nature has worked out this idea of rebirth. You have to come back. And even if that entails suffering, a lot of people learn through suffering. And hopefully wake up from that suffering and determine that they don't want to continue suffering. And so the Dhamma is how to live one's life, is a teaching of how to live one's life to work out all of those karmic blocks or karmic obstacles, karmic forces that are continuing to give a lot of people problems. Now, so life shouldn't be seen as, or death shouldn't be actually feared. What should be feared is the mind that still is full of a lot of greed, hatred, and delusion. Or if you still have a lot of bad habits that, destroy the mind, or bad habits that bring so many problems, like various types of addictions and dependencies, or other strong emotions like greed, hatred, fear, lust, the whole gamut of emotions. Because these are the kind of things that actually are what bring the various types of problems to our life. Because I mentioned before, we mentioned before, right, that every living being is seeking to find and live in a state of happiness and to be free from pain and suffering. Wouldn't you agree? And I don't know. Like the example of the little ant, right? The little ant is crawling along the ground, just wanting to be happy, wanting to find some sugar or something. But you put your finger down in front of it, and, it turns around and goes away, because it has that sensitivity, that sense of danger. So everybody is seeking to be happy, but yet so many people are doing the very things that create unhappiness in their life. And again, it's because simply they haven't trained themselves, or they haven't been taught in the first instance, probably. Or even if they have been taught, for some reason they don't listen. And that's due to many different reasons too, social circumstances, conditionings, and so on. But anyway, the idea is that each lifetime should be seen as a classroom to learn certain lessons, to unblock overcome certain types of negative habits, so the life can gradually evolve. Not evolve so much as sort of Darwin's theory of evolution, although that has happened, but evolve mentally from an ego-bound, the mind that's bound tightly to its sense of self and I, and just addicted to eat, drink, and be merry, and just that very and caught up in all these negative emotions and so on. So that's how according to the Dhamma, we should see the nature of this life and use this life in a skillful way. So when we die, we won't have any regrets. And something's called unfinished business, right? What is unfinished business? It's, well, I haven't done this and I haven't done that. People have the bucket list. Right? They want to do all these things before they die. There may not be any harm in having a bucket list, but the idea is that, we have all these, emotions and these things that we want to do, but yet we can't get them all done. Or we die younger. So people keep procrastinating because they think they're going to live old. And just because you're healthy now, you think you're going to live to be, reach, to old age. And we hope that you do, but that's not any guarantee. And so this, a lot of people procrastinate, and they're doing good things, or practicing religion, let's say, or Dhamma or meditation. And then some people use meditation only as a kind of a crutch. When something happens, and then they get into a lot of problems, and then they think, oh, I better meditate, right? Or they try all kind of different things, therapies, shock therapies, pills, surgeries, so many type of things people that try to overcome whatever, any physical problems that they have, or mental problems that they have. And most of those things may help a little bit, or maybe delay some suffering and so on for a while. But generally, in the end, a lot of them don't work. And so a lot of people finally say, oh, well, I guess I better try meditation. It's like, it's like a last resort, right? But, from our Dharma understanding, we shouldn't see meditation as something like that. We should see it as a preventive, not as a cure, because once you've actually got yourself deep into the suffering, it's much, much harder to get out of it. And so the Dhamma practice, which meditation is one of the key tools in transforming our mind, that should be done as something that, like brushing your teeth or taking a bath every day. The practice of meditation is seen like that. It's like brushing our mind, or giving our mind a bath to clean it from its negative thoughts and confusion and so on, because it's so easy to accumulate these influences from society. I mean, especially with children, right? And young people, peer pressure, and they get kind of pressured into, young people going to universities, get pressured into going to wild orgies, or taking some drugs, or doing other kind of things. And then it's very hard to get rid of them. Actually, there's a phenomenon or reality, that it's easy to start bad habits, or it's easy to start doing things that are maybe not too good for you, but but hard to give them up. So it's easy to start bad habits, but hard to give them up. Anybody have that experience? You started smoking when you were young, or using some drugs, or using bad language, or any kind of habit. And then it's hard to do things that are good for you, and easy to give them up. Huh? So how many of you that are meditating now, how long was it that you were contemplating, yeah, I should do yoga, yeah, I should start meditating? And how many years did that go on before you actually, started doing? And then after doing it for a month or two, something comes up, maybe you got sick, or you moved somewhere, and it was pretty easy just to drop it off. Stop the meditation, stop the yoga. Oh, I'll get back to it, yeah. And then wind up some years later, oh my gosh, I better get back to yoga and meditation. It's interesting. It's really strange how that is. Even I can't explain that. But so these are just the difficulties that people encounter in wanting to, practice the Dhamma. Now, coming back to, the dying and so on, again, death is very natural. But people think it's sort of unnatural, and they think, that they shouldn't die, that they should live to an old age. Because a lot of times people are, dying, or they get sick, some young child dies, or so many other people, they're always saying, why me? What's happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Whether it's being attacked or, so many of the problems that come, even though people are doing all the, religious things even perhaps and so on, but yet still things happen to them. So even that is not as a guarantee that, sickness, old age, and death is going to happen. Actually, there's 5 recollections that the Buddha mentioned. It says 5 things should be remembered every day by monastics as well as lay people. And that is, this body, or I am of the nature to get sick. I have not gone beyond sickness. I'm of the nature to get disease. I have not gone beyond disease. I'm of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond death. And everything dear and delightful to me will change and vanish. And then the last one, I'm the owner of my karma. I was born from my karma, supported by my karma. Whatever karma I do, whether good or bad, I'll be the heir of that. So those 5 recollections are recommended by the Buddha to remember every day, so that when things happen, we won't be surprised. Because when you're born, basically because of all of our past history, you were born, everything's on the table. It means according to the karma, you could die in every possible, conceivable way, have any possible, conceivable illness, sickness, accident, in the drop of a hat, in the blink of an eye. Any of those things could happen. You could go to a routine checkup in the doctor and then get a report that, you got a positive test, something like that, or a terminal disease. And then people will panic. Why did this happen to me? I was a vegetarian. I did this, I did that, or so many other excuses. Or, somebody gets murdered or killed. Oh, they were such the sweetest person, why'd that happen to them? They'd be the last person that would happen to. But, karma is so deep and mysterious that no one can determine. Now, death is certain, but the time of death is not certain, is uncertain. And also the mode, how we will die and where we will die, is also uncertain. Because again, it could happen at any place in any time. So that's why we don't have the luxury to think, I'll wait until I retire from work. I'll wait until my grandkids are graduated from college, or so many types of things that people might be thinking about. And to clear up any of that unfinished business. Because the test of whether you're ready to die is if any of those things can happen, death gets confronted, you'd be able to say, okay, it's my time. Let's go. And not have any fear or worry about it. Or the mind wouldn't have any regrets that, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Or, I wasn't able to do that yet. So these are the kind of considerations that as Dhamma practitioners, we should use as a motivation for the practice. But people get sick in a hospital and they think that the doctor should cure them somehow. They're depending on these doctors and all these medicines and technologies to cure them. And then if they don't get cured, they kind of blame, well, the doctor wasn't good enough, or, the faulty machine, or, or the doctor, if their patients die, they feel that they were a failure. Sure, there could be mistakes made, of course, but in the end, if it's your karma to die, then you're going to die. And there's certain karmas that, your fate is that you're going to die by a knife or some other accident. Now, people don't like to hear that, but, it's inevitable. So the idea that death is something to be feared, and people are doing all kinds of things to prevent from dying. And of course, that's good because we need to live as long as possible. This life, this human life, is one of the best environments or bodies for practicing the Dhamma. So we should want to live long enough to make a good progress in that purification of the mind. But one of the ways that we can help to live longer is by avoiding the types of karma that bring premature death, like getting involved in crimes and other, like breaking the precepts, going out and sleeping with somebody else's husband or wife or this or that, and they come around to kill you for it. Or, so many other, types of, breaking those sort of, what do we call the precepts? The 10 unwholesome actions. So this is the way that at least you can't avoid all forms of death, but you can prevent a lot of unnecessary ones by, as I just mentioned, by living a skillful life, a mindful life, not getting addicted to things and so on. So at least probably you would live out much of your lifespan. So just a moment. And the Buddha also gave another kind of a nice little analogy or a little comparison. So there's 4 types of people in the world. well, there's many more types than just four, but it's just, four types of people in the world in the ways that they think about the realities of death or life, or how they, practice the Dhamma. So there's a story of the four thoroughbred horses. So let's say there's a farmer who lives on a hill, and he has a barn down the hill. There's a big barn, and he has four workhorses there. And so in the morning, the farmer gets up in the morning, goes out his farmhouse door, and the screen door on the farmhouse, on the hill kind of, bangs shut as the farmer's leaving. And one of those horses hears that and gets up and says, "Oh, the farmer is coming today. Let me get up and prepare myself for today's work." And the other three horses keep on sleeping. And then the farmer walks down the hill and to the barn and opens the old creaky barn door, like you hear on the movies, right? And the second horse jumps up and says, "Oh, the farmer has come now. Let me prepare myself for today's work." And the other two keep sleeping. And then the farmer goes to the center of the barn, where they have the chains and the goads and tools, hanging. And he, starts grabbing one of the goads and rattles the chain. And then the third horse jumps up and says, "Oh, the farmer has come. Let me get ready for work." And the fourth one, still sleeping. So the farmer actually has to get the goad, the metal goad, and jab the horse in the ribs, and only then the horse gets up and, "Oh, the farmer's here." So like that, there's these kind of people living their life, sort of ignoring the realities of life, or wanting to, seeing the motivation for, doing things that are good for it, in terms of especially of Dhamma practice. Now, this can also come back to a more contemporary situation, life here in the city, right? Or with this pandemic. So that's, 2 years ago when COVID first was heard about, according to some people, it was a China thing, right? Maybe I shouldn't mention countries, I'm sorry. But anyway, so it was something over there on the other side of the world. It's an Asian disease or whatever. And so people didn't think much about it. Or a few people might have. Or Asian people living here, they heard about it. They were the first ones to go buy face masks. And then finally it takes, people arriving here in America, getting some of these COVID here. And then people started to get a little bit worried. Then more people started, "I better wear a mask. I better start sanitizing my hands, and telling it on the TV and so on." But a lot of people still, "No, that's not going to come here." First it was in Washington State, maybe a few isolated places. And then little by little it started spreading, so many other places. And more people got worried, and then more people started wearing face masks, or they made it, sort of mandatory. And, the shelves were bought out of supplies, cleaning supplies and masks. But then there's still some people even today who still refuse to wear masks and think it's a hoax and so on. And now even they are getting COVID and dying from it. But so they're like the last, of those four categories of persons. So I'm just giving that example to show that we shouldn't put off our practice of Dhamma in meditation, thinking that we're going to, live long, because how many people in this country have died from COVID in just the last year? Almost 1 million or so since it started. And it's still spreading around the world, even getting worse in some places, I've heard. So now this is not necessarily a fear thing, but it's a sort of common sense. And let alone that, of course, we shouldn't use that as a motivation for practicing Dhamma, but it could take some people, those extreme kind of cases, to take up the practice. And even amongst people who've been practicing the Dhamma for a long time, their practice also, maybe, on a very minimal level, which in many cases is maybe not enough to weaken the effects of maybe the unmindful things that we still do. But anyway, so the contemplation of the reality of death is seen as that to develop the sense of urgency. And it's not only the fear of death, it's suffering here and now. I mean, suffering is immediate and our karma is immediate. If we shout some 4-letter words at the wrong person, that could bring a serious problem, right? Or, breaking any of the precepts could cause retribution in one way. Even just stealing something from somebody could cause you, they to take revenge and kill, or anyway, get put in prison, where then you might even suffer more. So like that, but but a lot of people don't think clearly like that because they're such in the grip of their emotions or in their cravings and so on, that they can't control themselves. And they're only thinking about, living for today. So anyway, that's, and also as you get older, it's more difficult to practice, especially meditation, because then your body gets weaker and then you get more pains, and, it can be more difficult to spend a lot of time meditating. But one should always ask in preparation. So actually, life should be seen as a preparation for death. Because again, death is the most important time of our life. It's because at the time of death, when the consciousness leaves the body, it is said that the whole unconscious mind rushes up like in a dream, or rushes up, and the strongest memories or the strongest habits, one of these kind of memories or habits is going to be, the mind will catch on to that, will be frightened by that, or be attracted by that. And it could be a pleasant thing too. All karma is not all bad, but it's the well, to use those terms, bad karma and good karma, that's relative, but there's also wholesome karma that brings happiness too. So actually, the whole Dhamma practice is about, the right effort. And I'll talk about that tomorrow in the closing talk. But the effort to decrease the bad habits and negative states of mind, and then the effort to develop and increase the wholesome habits and states of mind, and continue to make them stronger, so that they will gradually overlay or overpower the negative ones, or take precedent over the unwholesome ones. So at the time of death, these powerful memories come up, and the mind will, it's called the sign of destiny. So according to the Theravada tradition of the dying process, there's the last thought before the consciousness actually leaves the body. And it could be even in an unconscious state, because people die sometimes in their sleep or in their, it doesn't mean the mind's not working. So it could be a dream image. If you died in your sleep, it could be one of these dream images or something that comes up, but the mind will, whatever the mind grasps at that last moment is said to be the indication of where the mind might reappear in the next life. And you cannot control that, really. But the more stronger the habits you have, the more likelihood is that one of those will be that kind of sign of destiny. So the stronger the habits of Dhamma that you cultivate while living, such as the practice of generosity, the practice of dana, and of course sila, living by the precepts to refrain from those negative actions, and meditation. Actually, meditation is said to be the most powerful form of karma, because that actually transforms our consciousness. Whereas dana and sila can prevent a lot of suffering and bring causes for happiness, but it's meditation that actually transforms one's consciousness from the ego-centered standpoint, and hopefully to get reconnected and tuned in to that stream of pure awareness, present moment awareness, at the time when death would happen. So from the Dhamma point of view, that's the way that we would see the best use of this life would be to prepare for that. Because again, we don't know when that's going to happen. And so one shouldn't put off the practice to clear up that unfinished business. So and one of the strong unfinished businesses is forgiveness. Is there somebody you're still holding in your mind, your memory, with some unpleasant feeling that you haven't forgiven, that may have done something to you, and you're still kind of holding them out of your heart? So forgiveness is a very important way of dying with awareness, and to forgive people that you have made have hurt you, and also asking forgiveness if you've hurt others also or to apologize to others and say you're sorry and so on, in order to let go of any of these kind of remaining little strings or seeds that could come back to cause you to have to work out that karma in the future. And also forgiving yourself. And that's why the practice of the Brahma Viharas are a very good way of preparing the mind for that eventuality, the practice of metta, and karuna, mudita, and upekta, or the practice of loving friendliness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And we have to spend a considerable amount of time in our life cultivating these things, because you can't just wait till the last week and then say, oh, I better start practicing metta now, because that's not enough time to develop it to a strong enough level to probably be very effective. So again, all these things are aspects of living with awareness, but dying with awareness, because actually we're dying all the time. Basically, from the moment you were born, you're starting to die in many ways, because some people actually do die. But especially when you reach middle age, then that process slowly happens. But anyway, so we should, living with awareness is knowing that also one could die at any time. But that's not a morbid thing. A lot of people think it's morbid. No, it's actually very joyful, because you're letting go of your negative habits. Why don't people want to let go of their negative habits? They love their addictions. And they may not love them. Addiction, I know it's a sickness and it's very difficult to overcome. So I'm not making light of that. But, people that are not addicted, they become addicted, when they know that they shouldn't. But again, there's so many causes and factors that attribute to that. So, some people are powerless to kind of overcome it. But if we ourselves, that's why we have to consider, there's something called reflecting on the, in Tibetan tradition, they call it the perfect human rebirth. And that means that, if you're born in this life and you don't have any relatively really chronic or bad diseases or other problems that prevent you from leading a basically okay life, and if you're able to have the type of life without too many problems and earn a livelihood, and then you become interested in the Dhamma at a fairly young age, because that's also not very a common thing, especially for Westerners who were born in these Western countries. Dhamma wasn't here in these countries until the late 60s or so, or 70s. But some people become interested in Dhamma. And so that itself is a kind of a blessing, what we regard as the Buddha regarded as a blessing, having done good deeds in the past, to sow the seeds of, being able to become interested in the Dhamma. But not only interested in it, but actually to start practicing it. And not practicing it in just a little, kind of a casual way, but really getting more and more interested in it. So, if you have any of those qualifications, that should be cherished and nurtured, because it's very rare. Out of these 7 billion people, if you're able to somehow count it up or calculate it, how many people are really, committed to the process of transformation, especially according to Dhamma. Of course, there could be some other, types of religious philosophies and so on that also have a lot of good things in them. But in terms of the meditation practice, as we've been talking about the last couple of days. So, to really cherish that and protect that so it's can continue to grow. So these are some of the main things to consider in this process of living with awareness and dying with awareness, but also at the time of death, not only one's own death, but we're going to have to deal with the death of our loved ones, our parents, other family members, and people, grieving. Maybe they don't understand Dhamma, and maybe, they don't practice Dhamma. Maybe they've done some unskillful things, and or even to you. And a lot of families, there's lots of dysfunctional families and lots of antagonistic things that go on within families too. A lot of unfinished business. But so the actual preparation for the death, especially if you're going to be being with somebody who's going to be dying fairly soon. I mean, because it's the environment and where a person is going to die that's also very important, and to set up a good sort of vibration in that house or in that place where the person is, and try to remind that person, especially if they've been practicing Dhamma, like playing Dhamma talks, or in Sri Lanka and Thailand, the tradition is when people die, they bring monks to do chanting in the hospitals if they're sick, or on their dying deathbeds and so on. They may put up pictures of saints or the Buddha or their favorite teachers they may have had, or play the types of parita, pirit chantings and so on, so that their mind would be hopefully gravitate to that and be kind of focused on that, rather than allowing their mind to just, if they're dying alone or in some drab place, then their mind might get sucked into some morbid types of thoughts, and not such healthy type of thoughts. In fact, just yesterday, I got an email from a woman whose husband had been a long-time student of mine, a student of the Dhamma, but he'd come to the Bhavana Society, and a very sincere practitioner. And she said he was dying. And he was he was about to die last year, and then something happened and he kind of hung on, and he kind of got a little bit better. But then I got this, it was a text actually, he was, in the dying process. That means that usually when a person actually starts dying, it takes 2 to 3 days. Even my mother, that happened too, for that death process to occur. And that is especially the time, even if the person is unconscious, they may appear to be unconscious or asleep, but they might be able to hear anyway, because hearing is one of the last things that goes off in the dying process. You have to be very careful of what you say around people that are dying, not to bring up a lot of negative things or anything that might cause them stress, and keep the environment very peaceful. But so anyway, this lady texted me and she asked me, is there anything that I can say to him or do to him at this time before he dies? And of course, they're living quite a ways away. So the only thing I think, well, because I know he was a very serious meditator, and he loved the Dhamma. So I sent her links to some of my videos. I said, if it's possible, to set up a little video there near his bed for one of these Dhamma talks and a guided meditation, because that's really probably one of the best ways, if a person is interested in Dhamma, and if they're sick and so on, or even if they're about dying, if that's what they hear, especially if they really liked it, or they see somebody they really respected and, like teaching and then doing a guided meditation. And if he was able to actually follow a guided meditation while he died, there is a chance they could attain enlightenment at that time. So these are things also you can consider if and when you, if you have loved ones or other friends, Dhamma friends, or you yourself, if you get to that condition, tell the people that you are living with or others that you wish that kind of thing. And that would probably be a very good thing to help, hopefully attract the mind to it. So that would be one of the last thoughts or images that appeared in that person's mind before they died. Or maybe not at that one moment, but even if you were doing it, a couple of days ahead of time, and even if they look like they're asleep, again, it's known that people can hear in their sleep, and if they hear that kind of like chanting, even chanting tapes, but like a Dhamma talk, and especially if they're familiar with it, that might prick up their mind. So these are very good things to consider and remember for, when that comes time, for yourself, but especially any of your other Dhamma practitioners or loved ones and friends and so on. So I think kind of running out of time, so I think we're going to bring this Dhamma talk to an end. And if you have any questions about any of these things, you can, for the people here in the house, you can write them down for tonight's question session. And for those tuning in over Zoom, our friends in Canada and some other places, then you could write them down in the chat box and for tonight's session also. Okay? Okay, so slowly stand up and practice a little standing awareness, deep breathing for a while before we sit down again for next sitting meditation. If you haven't already, do some 3-part breathing, drawing the air from the lower lung up to the top, holding the air in several seconds. Feel the subtle sensations, life force. On the out breath, try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. A brief pause, next in breath. Breathing in, standing. Breathing out, standing. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Just turning on the webcam. In the standing body. Try practicing just moving the attention to different parts of the body and holding your attention on different body parts for 15 seconds or so to feel the sensations in those places. Then move the attention to another place like that. Pick 5 or 6 places. Training and being able to move the attention to any specific place and hold it there for some time. Deliberately move it somewhere else. It's a skillful mental power used in meditation. And at some point, it's coming back to establish the whole body awareness. Holding that outline of the standing body, the mind's eye, the webcam. Especially be alert to notice the subtle movements of the body, the tiny little subtle movement. Body is always making corrective adjustments to keep from falling over. You just feel that organic, alive in the whole body. The heart beating with pulsation, and breathing. The inner warmth, tingling sensation. The living process. That is nature's love and metta and compassion to your mind, keeping your body working well. So the mind should do the same for the body by doing things that are good for it. healthy food, exercise, breathing, meditation, refraining from things that unnecessarily harm the body. It's a two-way street. The body helps you, you help the body. Because if something happened, suddenly had a heart attack or something else, this body dropped to the floor dead. In minutes, this body would start becoming cold. All those sensations quickly drained out of the body. You accept that now if it happened. Or is there still unfinished business? So continue standing longer if you like. Otherwise, when ready, mindfully continue in the sitting position. especially being alert to how quickly certain sensations arise and instantly vanish. Being aware of the unpleasant sensations pulling the mind, triggering thought. From time to time, take a few 3-part deep breaths. Recharge the webcam battery. Help recenter the breathing body. We'll be starting the interview period now for 2 or 3 people that have interviews. The rest of you just continue sitting as long as you like. At some point when you're ready, stand up again and do some walking awareness up until the yoga time. For those out there over Zoom, try to just continue sitting also as long as you can, and on your own, stand up and try to do some of that slow walking I was doing this morning. See you again tonight, 7 o'clock.